Oh, that is a good one. Well, emotionally, I hope. Oh, stunning, absolutely stunning machines. Oh, that's a brutal question. That came off the bottom of the deck.
This week we have tech creator David Lewis. He's known for covering tech on his Medium blog, his YouTube channel, and even hosts a tech podcast, -16. So I couldn't think of anyone better to give us his opinions on the tech world today. David, welcome to the channel.
Hello, great to be here, thank you.
For anyone that hasn't seen the David Lewis YouTube channel then, what is that about? What kind of content would they find on there?
Well, the channel's called Talking Tech and Audio. When I started the channel out, which was in September of 21, it was very much going to be based on audio. My background was in radio, funny enough, and I loved radio, and I built my own studio, broadcast studio, rather than going into London into their studios, which meant I learned an awful lot about everything to do with what you need to get good audio out. So I thought with starting a channel, that's where I'd go. Adobe Audition, I'm a big Adobe user, and that's why it's called Tech and Audio. So I thought it'd be looking at Apple gear, which I'm a big fan of and use all day long, and audio. But the kind of the audio side of it, the tutorials, has backed down a little bit. I did a lot of headphone videos at the start and some tutorials, which are good for evergreen. But you kind of migrate as you move along. So it's much more now talking about the tech side of things and very predominantly talking about Apple products.
Yeah, so I really wanted to get you on because you're doing something on YouTube, which a lot of people say is not possible today, where you're covering like lots of different tech. So you've got like computer videos, you've got Apple smartphone videos, Android videos, headphones, software, and they all seem to be pulling in views. So I guess my first question is really, how do you pick what to use, what to make a video on?
Well, it's weird because I think I'm one of the few. I speak to a lot of creators, and obviously I host, as you mentioned, the -16 podcast with Alex, another creator. So we get to chat, and all of them have this great pipeline of content. Many of them actually got physical whiteboards on the walls. I've been to many creators. I don't. It's the seat of the pants. Each week I think of the new idea. Generally, it's on a Saturday night and a Sunday I begin thinking, I've got a vague idea, but then I'll begin fleshing up. So the way that I now work, and it's taken a long time, I've really struggled. I mean, I'm getting some growth at the moment, and I think, maybe it's something we can cover in a bit, I've kind of worked out what works for me. But the way that I go about my content, everything starts with a blog. And I will normally write 3 to 4 times a week, which I publish on my website, talkingtechandaudio.com. That then goes through to Medium, and it's on Medium. That's where I get my reads, and that is also part of the money that sort of keeps the channel going. So one of those stories each week is always written very much in mind with being the content for next week's video. It's not the script per se. I don't sit and read it word for word, but it's very much, I have a Mac to one side of the camera. I know that it's written out in full form there, so I'm still telling the story, which is why I use it. It means I'm doing the intro, doing the hook, getting a beginning, middle, and end. So I found that works really well for me. I tried using a teleprompter. It was a little bit too wooden, so now I just speak. I fall back on what was my strength, i.e. radio, where you need to just be able to talk. So that's it. For me, that's how the content starts. So I never have a massive plan. I've generally got a vague idea about next week's video. I mean, as we record now, I've got a video going out in a few hours' time and already started thinking about next week. So I've got an idea, but I don't have any great plan. But it always starts with the blog, and then I repurpose that from there. And then once I've made the long form video, I'll normally also cut that down to a short as well. So generally at the moment, I'm putting up 1 long form video and 1 short a week, and writing about 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're chatting to a couple of creators as well. Did they give you advice on what to cover or what they think would do well? What kind of advice did they give you?
As to what to cover, that's very much on you, because I think you need to have a passion for it. It needs to be something clearly that you use. So I was a massive Apple fan and user for many, many years, and I always enjoyed watching content on it. And like many of us through lockdown, I watched a lot more. And it might surprise you to know, it wasn't until then I realised, hello, there's a living to be made in content creation economy. I had no idea about it. I thought, you can actually make a living out of this. So I decided to go headlong into it. But the actual content each week very much falls on me, where it has been great to talk to. I'm also part of a WhatsApp group as well. It's when either there's problems, or maybe if you're approached by somebody and you want to work out if it's a genuine approach or if they're worth working for, or what are they like paying, whatever, you know. But that's where it's a real strength in having. There was something in YouTube analytics recently that I had a problem with, and I reached out to someone and said, look, can I just jump on and do a screen share with you, can have a look at this. I don't quite understand what's going on, because there's so much data, of course, in YouTube Studio that you need to try and learn. And I've always tried to approach this as a business from day one. I've always run my own businesses, and this was no different. I was always going to approach it in a very business-like fashion, and that's what I've tried to do. So but each week they haven't helped in respect of what content to make, but apart from saying maybe you should focus on this or niche down a little bit. So I've had some advice, but week to week it's very much what I feel like making content on.
Yeah, so that's something that I've been working on as well, trying to like make a few more connections so I can chat to a few more people, bounce YouTube ideas off of things, YouTube problems off of other people, see if they've got any advice for me.
Really important.
But so you've mentioned briefly about your previous jobs. Do you want to just describe what they were and how it helped you sort of getting into YouTube and sort of the benefits it might have given you?
Yeah, I mean, the first main career I had, my apprenticeship was as a printer. My dad had a printing company, and so I was a cricketer. I played professional cricket for a time. Printing then was a family business. I went into that. But then this side of it, radio was really where I began to find a flavour of this. I spent about almost 10 years doing 3 live shows a week, specialist music shows. One of those shows became very heavily leaning on interviews. During lockdown, I had a jazz show. I realised that the jazz guys didn't have a platform, they didn't have a stage, so I began getting them on just so they could be kept a little bit in the public eye. Turned out to be very popular. I then walked away from radio and started the Talking Tech brand or business, and I wanted to bring that over, and that's when the podcast came in. So the Minus 16 podcast, which I initially, for the first year or so, did it purely solo. And as you said, I reached out to creators, and I just wanted to talk to people that I watched, talk to people that I found interesting, and I would say almost without exception, they were all really gracious. And I've had some really fairly, Sam Cole has been on, Ross from he does the display, all the display news on Twitter and so on. He came on. I've had all sorts of really good names on, and I love chatting. I almost prefer the podcast to the videos because it's interaction. So it was radio that really, I guess, brought me into this. But where I made a mistake, I thought that having been on radio, I'd find YouTube a very easy migration, but I did not. I have struggled like hell. So I started uploading videos September 21, and I was looking at the analytics recently, actually, and just to give you an idea, first of all, if anyone's thinking of starting a channel, it's brilliant, and I haven't regretted it. It's tough, and I'm sure many weeks it beats you up, and you kind of sit there thinking, what have I done wrong? What do I need to look at? What can I do better? But broad stroke, I'm really happy to have done it. But I starting September 21, I didn't get my first 1,000 subs until March of this year. So that's, a year and a bit, year and a half. And then suddenly I've seen growth. So it took me over a year to get that first 1,000 to 2,000 I did from March to September. And then just recently I've gone from 2 to 3 in 3 months, and already approaching 5 now. So, but I think that's down to just finding what I needed to do. And it took me, I've always beaten myself up saying I was very slow at learning. I don't know if that's the case or not, but you hear these stories of meteoric rise. I certainly haven't been that. I'm still a small channel, but interestingly, I've got a very good interaction. If you look at the comment ratio to views, it's very high. I still reply to every single comment that people send in. It takes me time. As soon as we finish now, I've got about 20 or 30 comments to go through that come through overnight. But my thought is, if they're gracious enough to watch my video and interact, the least I can do is spend an hour a day replying. There will come a point, possibly, when there's a tipping point and I can't. But for the time being, everybody that comments gets replied, because I think that you hear this word community, and I think that's really important. They've taken time to invest in me and watch me. The least I can do is hear what they've got to say. And I've never had any... I get views that are contrary to mine, and that's fine. But most of them are really well put across. I've not had any issues with any kind of nasty comments, trolls. It's really been a good place to be, and we just had a really good chat about, whatever I happened to have made a video on. Recently, for instance, the studio display, an Apple product, which is very expensive for what it is. And I knew making the video, it would be divisive, but the comments have all been good. Some said, well, it's too much for this, but we've had a discussion, and that's kind of what it's about. So, yeah, I thought radio would be a bigger help than it was. It really wasn't. YouTube is something that is completely void of anything I'd tried before. I'd never used a camera. I'd never sat in front of a camera. I didn't own a camera. I started a channel with a basic iPhone 12, not even a Pro, so it's a really poor quality camera. I'd never used any editing software, so I had to teach myself Premiere Pro. It's just a massive learning curve, and just how to be comfortable in front of a camera, that takes time. And obviously, the more comfortable you get, the better the channel becomes, because then you're suddenly becoming yourself. And once I think you become yourself, that's when people invest in you, because they want to come and hear what you've got to say, how you've got to say it. And hopefully, most of the creators I watch, I look forward to stepping into their studio for 20 minutes at a time just to be with them that week. I've got a bunch, I suppose, 15, 20 creators I'll religiously watch every week. Most in the tech space, but some more journalistic based, some interview based. And I love the platform. I watch an awful lot of YouTube, and not only because I enjoy it, but also to make sure I'm keeping up to date with what the current trends are, and editing techniques and titles, the whole thing.
Yeah, you've mentioned a lot there. So let's break that up a little bit. So the YouTube comments thing, I think the worry of getting bad comments can put a lot of people off. But I think when you're starting, most of the comments that you get, they're really supportive, and they just want to see you do well, especially if they think the content's good, they share it a lot more. I think as you get bigger, you're going to attract more of the negative comments. But I think when you're starting out, it's largely positive. And then you mentioned that your channel's growing quite a lot recently, which leads me to my next question, which I want to ask about these iMac videos, because they seem to be doing fantastically well. When you made the first one, did it do well straight away, or was it a bit of a slow burner?
So recently, since I've seen growth, I've changed my approach. I like to think the growth I've seen hasn't been by accident, but by studying the data that's there. And then I got lucky with the iMac. It was weird. I mentioned that I write a lot, and when I bought the iMac, I kind of thought, well, I'm going to lose money on YouTube with it, but I'll probably make the money back on Medium. So people seemed until recently to like me writing about Apple, but not making videos about Apple. But where I've found the line is I don't think people like me talking about iPhones, but they actually quite like when I talk about Macs or studio displays and other sort of devices. So the iMac came along, and I've been an iMac lover forever and ever. And I think I dug out this old iMac, my first ever iMac, and people just got into the whole retro thing, and it started this massive conversation about iMacs. And I found then I was seeing who my demographic was, that was slightly older, 45 to 65, virtually, 100% men, and mostly in the States. So I thought, okay, now I know who I'm talking to. Now I can begin to make content. And yes, the iMac videos have done very well. In fact, to what we were talking about earlier on, already I'm thinking ahead to next week that I will probably be making another video on the iMac, and it's obviously trying to find a different spin on it. But the iMacs have been very kind to me recently. I've seen good numbers on them, and gained a lot of subs. When I was on my podcast last week, and we were talking about subs, we had another guest on. I said, I don't know what's good or bad. You know, the figures that you see, you don't know how they relate. And I said, I've had 200 subs on each of 2 videos, 400 subs on, in total. And I said, that is good. Whatever your views, that's good. So, yeah, I think people have finally I have found what people want from me, and more importantly, how to deliver it.
So did the first iMac video, did that inspire the other videos, or did you already have a couple of videos planned out for the iMac?
No, definitely they inspired it. I tested the water again, and it was exactly what we were talking about earlier. I'd written about it, so I had a good feel of what I wanted to say about it. And when you write, it brings out certainly my emotions of what I want to talk about. So the fact that they did well, clearly I decided, okay, well, I'm going to get as much content out of this as I possibly can. And people like me talking about iMacs. I think the way I put it across, they know that I'm a genuine lover of iMacs. And yeah, they've led me on to make more. So I was making, and equally the studio display, I'd made 2 videos before, and both had got decent views. But then this one that I put up a couple of weeks ago has begun to get really good growth very quickly. And I think, again, that's because I know who I'm talking to more now. I found a different way to talk about it, and I kind of changed the tone of it and learned from mistakes. I have learned a lot of lessons recently about how to put myself across. And I think that the whole thing you hear about telling a story is really important. And I think now I finally learned how to tell a story through a video, and that's helped as well.
Yeah, that's something I'm really struggling with at the moment. But I do want to ask something really specific about the iMac. How much longer do you think it sticks around for?
Well, emotionally, I hope, because it's so connected to Steve Jobs and it's a big part of Apple's history, it's the machine that saved them from bankruptcy, you know, it's got so much going for it. And it is a great machine. It is still the best all-in-one desktop, bar none. But of course, we know that desktop and laptop sales are dwindling, particularly desktop sales are dwindling. And you could argue, is there a place in the lineup for it? Because everything, to be honest, everything the iMac can do, a MacBook Air can do. I'm working on a MacBook Air with you now, and you know, they are such great machines, similar kind of price. So logically, there's not really a place for the iMac. Emotionally, I hope they keep a place for it because it's a great machine. And I've just bought the new M3 iMac, the very standard 8 gigs of RAM. You know, it's the most basic machine you can get, and it is so good. I've been working on that virtually exclusively for the last month, and it's such a good machine. I mean, it struggles on a couple of the higher end things when I get to video work, so I still use my main machine is a 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro, 4 terabytes of storage, 32 gigs of RAM, and unified memory.
Yeah, that's the dream laptop. I've currently got the M1 MacBook Pro. I think it was the base model at the time, but it's just a workhorse. It's been great for me.
Oh, stunning, absolutely stunning machines.
Yeah, I do hope they keep the iMac, but after the iPod went, I understood why the iPod went, and I can understand why they would get rid of the iMac. But I feel like it's probably got a couple more years left in it yet.
Yeah,
so
I
on another
hope so.
topic,
I really do.
Do you know what your best performing video is? Your long form videos?
I think, and I might be wrong here. No, is the quick answer. As much as I'm trying to look at data, I haven't looked. I think it's possibly a Pixel video. I think I made something about the Pixel 7 Pro earlier this summer, and I think that did very well for me.
Yeah, that's it. The Pixel Peeping one. You've got the Pixel 7 Pro. It's got 15,000 views. So I've seen that you've covered a few Android phones on there. Is there anything that you particularly like or don't like about Android phones?
Right, so I hadn't used an Android phone at all until this summer. I'd been so loyal to Apple. Then I was with the creator that I make my podcast with, Alex, from Alex Gear and Tech. I was with him. He had this Pixel kicking around, so I picked it up. He said, I'm not using it. Put it away. And I began to quite like it. I do get that. In fact, as we record, it's funny you should be talking, you've led me perfectly into it. The video that's going out just after we recorded this is about why I've come back to iPhone. And it's not one of those typical kind of shill things, oh, iPhone's brilliant. I think Android users love, and I don't mean to offend Android users at all, I think they enjoy sitting down and fiddling and creating their apps and putting them in a certain order and constantly changing wallpapers. My phone is sitting there and it's very much a part of my business. I use it for trade. In fact, recently I've swapped from using my Canon camera to actually shooting ProLog and ProRes and log on the iPhone, and people have been commenting on what a fantastic quality of shot it is. So I understand. I think that's why I haven't got into Android. I do really enjoy the Pixel. It's with me most days. I use it to some degree most days, but not as my sort of business tool. And I think it's just because I actually use the phone for work. Whereas Android users, I think, are a bit more kind of social and domestic with it and enjoy playing with it. When I'm sitting on the sofa in the evening, I've kind of had enough of playing with phones. It's time to put them down. So I think, but I've enjoyed the one thing of using Androids this year. It's given me context. I understand some of the good parts of Android. This year I've covered the Samsung Flip 5, the Nothing Phone 2, and the Pixel 7 Pro and Pixel 8 Pro, and the Pixel 8 Pro I've actually bought. So I've bought 3 Android phones this year and tried to cover them all. And the Pixel, and I might buy the Samsung S24 when it comes out in January. It's an expensive phone, and at the moment the channel's not really making me much money. It is monetized now at least, and I'm making a little tickle each month, but not enough to buy the Samsung. But I might do it because, again, I think it might be relevant just to me understanding what's good about that compared to the 15 Pro Max that I currently use.
Yeah, I've got this one here, the Pixel 8, the regular one, and it won Marquez's Phone of the Year this year.
Yes,
he must have a different one than I've got.
It did well in his reviews.
Yeah, it's been awful for me, and like I've been in contact with Google to do some refreshes and stuff like that, and it's still terrible. It keeps like cutting out, and it'll just keep flashing at me.
Really?
If it's like propped up next to me, it'll just flash at me, and like I keep getting orange and green lines shooting across the screen. But I've stuck with it now.
Yeah, I mean, I have used it. It's just over to the other side of the studio at the moment. But yeah, I like it. I've got the 8 Pro. And I will be covering it some more. I've got some ideas of other videos I'm going to make on it, but it's a really lovely phone. That's why I don't ever buy and return. When I buy things, I keep them because I think I'll always come back to them at some point and have another look at them, or there might be some updates that want covering. I know, for instance, with the Pixel, you know, they've just released Video Boost and Night Sight, whatever it's called, and I want to look at that a little bit more clearly and see what I think of that. So there's always something that you can look at and make content out of.
Yeah, like you said, with Android people liking to tinker and stuff like that, you'll notice if you have a look around through YouTube and stuff, Android update videos seem to do really well. And yeah, just talking through the updates, they just seem to do incredible numbers like you wouldn't believe. Even if they're like 30, 40 minutes long, they still do really well. But I did just want to ask
Yes, I
about
saw
the
you had some really
podcast
big
side
views,
of
yeah.
things as well. How have you found running minus 16 alongside like a YouTube channel? Does it take up a lot of time? I imagine it's quite a demand on your time.
Yes, I actually almost prefer the podcast to the videos because it comes back to that thing of talking and interviewing and just having a discussion like we're doing now, which I really, really love. But I don't spend enough time on the channel. I think the content we put out is really good, and that's not me being biased. At the beginning of this year, I decided to bring on a co-host, Alex, I've mentioned before. So we do the podcast together now. I think having somebody to bounce off actually works rather than me just talking on it. It essentially would be another long-form video if it's just me. So making it into the podcast is good. I set it up as a separate channel, took it away from my Talking Tech channel, gave Minus 16 its own channel. And I absolutely love it. Yes, it does take time. I use the same platform that we're recording now, Riverside. I've tried others, but Riverside just works. I like the team behind it, and it's a really good platform. During the summer, I actually drove to Alex and we sat and recorded together. I think when you've got the dynamics being in the same room with somebody, that actually helps as well. But yeah, I really love the podcast, and it's a shame it doesn't do better. But I think that's down to the fact I'm obviously concentrating on trying to make my main channel grow, and I haven't spent enough time. And as you know, making a channel a success takes a lot of time. So I love doing it. I'm really happy with the content we put out and the way we form it, which tends to be gadget first half and then YouTube business second half, because there's always something. For instance, I got hit by the invalid traffic fiasco this year. So, you know, that's been something that we've covered on the podcast. There's always something to talk about in YouTube, be it analytics, data, how you schedule, thumbnails, you know, whatever. There's always something to talk about.
Yeah. How did you meet Alex then?
Reaching out to him, actually. I think, I can't remember if it's through a WhatsApp group or... No, I think it was through Mark Ellis, actually. I think Mark and I went back a little while, and Mark mentioned there was another UK creator, Alex, and it's what we were talking about earlier on. Do you think he'd mind if I reached out? So I think I DM'd him on Twitter or something. And I had him on the show as a guest initially, and then we just got on really, really well. And that's when I thought it was January this year, I reached out and said, you fancy doing this regularly? So every fortnight we get together. And our channels are similar. You know, he covers a lot of smartphones, Macs, but they're not mirroring one another, but we've got similar interests. And I've just found I work really well with him. So the way the podcast works now is I record it in Riverside. Generally, I'll do the editing and go through and do all the timestamps. Then I upload it to Alex, and he'll take care of the thumbnail and publishing it, and I'll do the audio because it goes out as an audio podcast as well on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and so on. So I publish that to my host. So yeah, I love doing it. Really love doing it. It's an hour of the week that I always look forward to.
What gear are you using to create your videos then? So like camera, microphone, what are you editing on?
Okay, so I had been using the camera that I'm using now to talk to you with, which is the Canon 90D. So it's not a particularly high-end camera. I bought it second-hand, but it's the first actual digital camera that I've owned. I recently switched to using the 15 Pro Max, using the Blackmagic app, shooting in ProRes and log. I finally found out how to make that look good. So that's the camera setup. The mic, obviously this is my podcast mic, which is an Audio-Technica 2035, my old radio mic. When I'm recording videos, I use a Rode NTG for a shotgun. That goes through a processor, a Vocaster 1, which just has a little bit of sparkle and processing to it, and I record it in Adobe Audition, and then I sync up the video and audio in Premiere Pro, because I say I'm an Adobe boy, so I don't use Final Cut or Logic. I'm all the way Adobe, so it's Audition, which I process the audio in first, and then I take it over into Premiere and I edit in Premiere.
So when you first started to take YouTube seriously then, what was the first gear purchase that you made to up the quality?
I guess that would have been the camera. When I bought that, I thought, right, let's get serious. Let's improve the quality of the video. The audio, I was always reasonably, because of the radio background, I was reasonably happy with the quality of that. But the thing is, it's like the Severn Bridge. As soon as you buy one thing, there's something else you want to buy. There's something else you think needs improving, whether it's sound deadening in here in the studio, whatever. There's always something. Taking his studio space on was another sort of putting a flag in the sand, saying, right, this is the next step of what I want to do, and just taking it seriously. So I think the camera was the first thing that I bought, and then after that, you name it. There's been so many bits and pieces you buy along the way. Sliders, for instance, I use a lot because I said B-roll. I love shooting, so I've got all sorts of sliders. Tripods, I seem to have more tripods than I know what to do with now. So it just keeps mounting up.
Yeah, my first tripod, that tripod was the first thing that I bought to hold my phone. And I don't know how you lose a big tripod, but I don't know where it is now.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So on to the YouTube questions then. So out of creating thumbnails, titles and filming, what do you spend the most time on?
The process I was talking about earlier on that I find is working for me now is 100% I will do the thumbnail first. I will come in, shoot a load of shots. I have it in my mind's eye. I might storyboard it. I know what I want the thumb basically to look like. I hardly ever use my face in it. It's always product. I found once I've got the thumb down and the wording on the thumb, that focused me for the week then. I know what the video's got to be about. I'll then have the title, which will be written at the top of the blog or the script. So I've got thumb, title, and I'll always bring those elements into the first 20 seconds of the video. And that seems to work well for me. So I spend a lot of time on the thumb. My background's also in graphic design, so I kind of know my way a little bit around Photoshop. And it also, if the thumb's done early enough in the week, it means I can carry on just looking at it and tweaking it rather than doing it last minute, putting it up and then regretting it and swapping it out. I'm trying to spend more time earlier in the week on the thumbnail. That's always the first thing now. So for me, it's thumbnail first, and that does take me a fair time. Title, and then write the description, and then shooting. Shooting also, I've simplified recently. I used to go very, very heavy on editing and all sorts of graphics and so on. I've realised that's not what my particular audience like. So, but I do, as I said, spend a lot of time on B-roll, and people have noticed that. They realise, they've commented on the quality of the B-roll. I like to show a product as much as I possibly can, so you can always feel it.
Yeah, I bet shooting B-roll for a product like an iMac is quite difficult, having to stage such a big product.
Yeah.
A lot easier when it comes to phones.
It is, and also reflections. The bane of my life are reflections. You have to try and work so hard. I've got a fairly good lighting setup in here now, but you still got reflections. I've got baffle sheets going around everywhere and trying to just work out how to not get bounced off the screen and so on.
So how often are you checking YouTube Studio? This is an interesting question I like to ask.
Too often.
Yeah.
I've actually not looked at it this morning because I was running late to get here for you. I'll normally look at it at home. So I have this kind of procedure that I do in the mornings. I'll get up. As I mentioned, I reply to all of the comments, and I will always go into... I do look at YouTube Studio. I'm guessing, if I'm being brutally honest with you, probably 4 to 5 times a day. I don't go through the weeds. I'll have a look at the sub count, what the views are doing, messages, that kind of thing. Maybe once every couple of days, I'll actually go into the recent video and begin pulling apart their retention, average view, how it's performing, what the impressions are. If YouTube seems to like it, it's giving me impressions, what my click-through is. So I do spend some time now, but you need to get to a certain point of having enough people watching before you've got enough data that is really relevant. And I'm luckily now beginning to get... But even now, every time I upload a video, I think, oh, this is going to be the one that tanks. I still don't believe I've got the formula, but, we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to some people that check it like once a week, but they're the people that are a bit more seasoned. And I wish I could be like that. I'm checking it a couple of times a day.
Yeah, I think you will find you're doing that. And, people that tell you otherwise, I think are probably being a little bit duplicitous. I think we all dip in there and want to see quite what's going on.
Yeah, especially when you're starting off. You want to see all the time, don't you? It's
Absolutely.
Exciting.
It is. It's very exciting. Yeah, the whole process of learning how to put a video up is actually really, really exciting.
So if you had to start again but pick a different niche, what would you pick and what kind of content would you do? So not YouTube, not tech stuff, not audio.
So on YouTube, but a totally different niche, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that is a good one.
Gives us a good idea of the kind of content that you like to watch.
I like conversations. I'd probably go more into a podcast situation. We can clearly mention it. A Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. Love that show. Colin and Samir, again, long form. You can often be talking an hour and a half. But I love sitting. My thought is that these shows now are replacing what the old chat shows used to be in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, where you used to have a chat show host come on and bring guests on. Now it's podcasts. So I think I'd probably lean more heavily into podcasts. I love traveling to meet creators, so I think that is something I'd love to do. Possibly I might dip my toe into cars, possibly. I'm not a huge car nut, but there's enough about them that I kind of like. I might be interested in making something about it. But the chat shows, that I watch a lot of those.
Yeah. Have you been recognised from the work that you've done on YouTube or your podcast yet? Has anyone spotted you?
No, the near is a quick answer. The only small claim to fame I had, one of my oldest friends who lives in Wales, went to see him this year, and apparently his next door neighbour, he was in the pub with him, and his neighbour was watching me talking about a nothing phone. And that's as near as I've got. I never met the neighbour, but apparently, so somebody out there does know that I exist. But no, I've been up to Apple Battersea a few times in London. They haven't the faintest idea who I am.
Yeah. So how long ago was it when you made your first YouTube video?
September 21.
Was that the first one completely, not just the first one on the channel?
The first one on the channel, I think I started a channel, but it was just, you know, my daughter ice skating or something, you know, it was nothing. So I started off by making a short diary series, just to get me into the habit of how to upload everything that goes behind, because of course there's a lot that goes in. It's not just a case of post. As you know, there's a lot that goes into it. Right, the description, getting the metadata, the tags, scheduling, putting in cards, putting in video cards through the video, all sorts goes into it. I also put subtitles on every video as well. I upload an SRT file in the background, so there's about 30 or 40 languages that are automatically subtitled, which I believe helps with SEO. So I do a lot in the background. But yes, the first one was a genuine YouTube video. It was a diary. I did about 3 or 4 diary episodes. Then I started talking about headphones, I think. And they've had some decent views, actually. I think there's one of those done 10,000 views, something like that.
Yeah, I watched the diary ones before we'd done this podcast.
That was the iPhone 12. That was how bad the camera was.
No, but when I was watching this, I was like, this guy's definitely got some background in audio. I'll ask him about that.
There you go.
Like, the audio from the start was fantastic.
Yeah, well, that was Audition. You see, I knew what I was doing on Audition. That helped. But Premiere Pro editing, I had no idea. I really had no idea. And I found my way. And also, as I say, I went through the habit of over-editing. Well, maybe that's unfair. Doing a lot of very clever editing, which pleased me, but I realised, and a classic example, if people want to look back, I did a studio display video in the summer, which has done pretty well, and only 6 months ago, and I look at it now, I look purple, the music bed's too loud, there's graphics popping up left, right and centre, and I just thought, what the hell are you doing? And if you look at the one I've just done now, it's stripped back. I think that's what I've realised. People like me just delivering dry dialogue. They want to come to me just to talk calmly about any product. They're not into me to be a 25-year-old whiz bang, everything going off. It's just a calm, measured delivery. So I think I'm finally beginning to find what people want from me and what they expect from me.
Yeah, there's becoming a real division on YouTube now of people either want the highly edited, fast-paced content, or they want the same content, the same thing being talked about, but in a slower manner.
Exactly.
More calm.
Yeah, and I think you know, I'm not the youngest YouTuber out there, so I think I've found where I need to be sitting, and I'm more confident now in what I can deliver. What
advice would David from today give David from 2 years ago?
It's the old nugget, actually, be yourself. And it's so easy to say, but it's so hard to find. And just recently, I think that I've begun to be me. The camera's a very intimidating thing. Sitting looking into a piece of glass is a very intimidating thing, and it's very awkward. But the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, and the more your mannerisms come out. And I think that's why people are coming back now, because they feel they're sitting with me. And people even mention the candles they have in the background. It's just a nice place to be. And if I can create that atmosphere, so yeah, I think I would drum that into the David of 2 years ago. Be yourself. Do not try to be somebody else. Sure, look at other people, pick out bits you like, but most importantly, be yourself.
What prompted you to start a YouTube channel then?
Passion. I absolutely love it. I needed a new challenge. I really fancied it. The whole content creator economy, I was pulling back the curtains on it, and it really intrigued me as to what went on in this dark, mysterious world of the content creators economy. And I thought, well, how hard can it be? Turns out it can be really hard, but it's been a really interesting passion, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. The amount I've learned in all areas, cameras, audio, editing, uploading, meeting people, everything, you know, it's been a fascinating journey. So it was purely passion. I loved Apple gear. I love tech. I realised I was watching a lot of it. So I thought, well, if I'm watching it, why don't I? Because, you know, you always think, well, everyone's making a video about an iPhone. What can be different about mine? And it's that old truism that it's your voice and it's your take on it is different to anybody else's. So it's always a different way of telling the same story.
Yeah, it's such a rewarding community to be a part of as well.
It is, yeah.
So what would you rate your videos out of 10?
Oh, that's a brutal question. That came off the bottom of the deck.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess my benchmark, I've got two people that I really admire as creators. You know, we're talking high end here. Peter McKinnon, purely because the art of his photography is beautiful and his storytelling is fantastic. But as a pure tech creator, Marquez, I think, is out there by himself. And if there's anybody I turn to think that's the style, again, even though he's a younger bloke, have you noticed his delivery is virtually music bed free? There's some graphics, but it's not over the top. It's a very stable, dry delivery. So I think that's the kind of people that I would turn to. And rating my videos, if I'm setting Marquez as the 10 out of 10, I'd like to think mine may be hovering around a 5 or 6. There's always something you can do to improve, but every week I'm looking to do something slightly better, whether it's the lighting behind me, whether it's the audio. I found new techniques recently just to make the audio slightly better. Without buying new kit. It's just, in fact, this little processor unit, this Vocaster one that I was telling you about, for instance, that wasn't a lot, it was about 100 quid, but it's made a massive difference to the audio. So as long as I feel that I'm making some improvement or learning about the video that I should be making, I'm much more proud of the video I've just made about the studio display than the one that I did 6 months ago. So that's a good sign.
Is there anything that sort of caught you off guard about getting involved in the whole YouTube space? Something that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, how brutally hard it is personally. And I'm sure you would have experienced it. Again, I would say that anyone who says they haven't is possibly telling a little porky. When you get a video that performs badly week after week, and I've had them, you just think, why? What better can I do? What more can I do? How much more can I put? It's because YouTube is about you. You're the face in front of the camera. I'm not saying it in an egotistical way. It's you talking. It's your script. It's your delivery. It's you that's edited it. If it bums and if it completely tanks, that's a slap on the face, and it really does hurt. And there have been some weeks I've just sat there thought, I've not got it in. But the one thing I am is tenacious, and I've never given in. I think it was 1 week I didn't make a video when I got COVID really badly, only last summer actually, so I was well behind the curve, but I got it really, really badly, and I think that's the only week I've not made at least a video. I only do one video a week because I think, it takes time. To make more than one video as one person, I wouldn't have it in me. So I like to give that one video all the love and attention I can for the week. And if I feel at the end of the week that I've given it my best, then I feel that that's as rewarding as I can be.
Yeah, I feel like YouTube's taught me a lot, and part of that is how brutally honest the lessons are. The analytics are all there.
They are.
So you know if the video that you made sucked, and it tells you where to get better.
Absolutely.
So have you set yourself any goals for the next 12 months?
Growth. I'd like everyone hears that, like and subscribe, and it actually really matters. That subscription really, really matters, because trying to run this as a business, obviously I need to begin to generate some income. I've done my first sponsored video this year with Clean My Mac. They were kind enough to sponsor one of my iMac videos, and so growth is important. I was hoping to get to 5k subs by the end of this year. I'd be surprised if I do it now in 10 days. But it could happen. I doubt it though. So I think if I can get to 10,000 subs by the end of next year, that will help bring in more potential advertisers, which will help fund it. I don't want to do too many paid videos because, of course, they're not good for the viewer generally, but they do help me go out and buy the gear. So I think growth and continually being more relaxed in front of the camera. I now know that that's what I need to do. Just be me. If I can be me as I am at home, but talking about tech, that I think will be the winning combination.
Yeah, well, I think that's a nice place to call it then, on that note.
Lovely.
So I'm going to link your YouTube channel and the podcast down below. Is there anything
Marvellous.
you want to give a specific shout out to?
No, I mean, I know you're using Riverside. I'm a huge believer in the guys there. Met them at the London Podcast Show this year. It's a great platform. So if you're thinking of doing anything like we're doing here, I suggest look at Riverside. It's absolutely awesome. Adobe, I know people love Final Cut and Logic. I think the Adobe products are great. No, I think just if you're interested in the content creator economy, look at writing as well. It's a really good passion to get into, and there's a lovely, lovely audience over on Medium, and it's a really lovely community to be, and they just marry together so well. I write those similar kind of things that I make videos about, but in a slightly different way, of course. So I think those are the things that I would, encourage. But just do it. The sooner you start doing it, the sooner you can start making mistakes, and the sooner you can start getting better.
No, that's perfect. We'll call it there then. Thank you very
Lovely.
much.
Great speaking with you.